All right, let's shift our focus now to the Russia-Ukraine war. After nearly 4 years of the war, bloodshed and widespread devastation, Ukraine may have just hit a wall, and it is now ready to drop its long-held NATO ambitions if it brings an end to the war. On Sunday, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is ready to consider a compromise, accepting security guarantees based on NATO's Article 5, even without formal membership. Now, this is already a big shift from Kiev's stated red line. And on Monday, European foreign ministers met in Brussels to reiterate their support for Ukraine, as they face growing pressure from the United States of America to quickly accept a US-brokered peace deal. Zelensky says that Article 5-like guarantees from the United States and from European partners, as well as from other countries, would, quote, provide an opportunity to prevent another arrival of Russian troops. He was sure to call it a compromise on Ukraine's part. The Ukrainian president also said that he was not ready yet to disclose specific details of the proposed security guarantees, saying that they would be known in a day or two. But there is one thing that Ukraine is not ready to compromise upon. As per reports, American negotiators still want Ukraine to cede control of the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions as a condition for peace talks with Russia. Now, these are regions that were unilaterally annexed by Russia back in September 2022. After a referendum, Kiev is reportedly now pushing back against American demand that it pull troops from these two regions, collectively known as Donbas, which, remember, Russia has been unable to capture since the attack in February 2022. Russian President Vladimir Putin wants territory, adding that the United States was demanding that Ukraine withdraw from the regions and that Kiev has been refusing. Remember, Russia controls almost all of the Luhansk region and about 80% of the Donetsk region. As far as Ukrainians are concerned, a poll by the Kiev International Institute of Sociology showed that 75% of Ukrainians are against giving up Donbas. Washington has tried for months to navigate the demands of each side as President Donald Trump presses for a swift end to this war. He has publicly grown increasingly exasperated as well by the kind of delays that these peace talks are witnessing. The search for possible compromises has run into major obstacles over the last few months. It comes after the European Union last week indefinitely froze Russia's assets in Europe to ensure that Hungary and Slovakia, both with Moscow-friendly governments, cannot prevent the billions of euros from being used to support Ukraine. Using a special procedure meant for economic emergencies, the EU has blocked the assets until Russia gives up its war on Ukraine and compensates its neighbor for the heavy damage that it has inflicted for almost 4 years now. Remember, this is a key step that will allow EU leaders to work out at a summit this week how to use the tens of billions of euros in Russian central bank assets to underwrite a huge loan to help Ukraine meet its financial and military needs over the next 2 years. Meanwhile, remember, Russia continues to make advances on the battlefield. On the day Ukraine agreed to drop its bid for a seat at NATO, Russian forces seized yet another settlement in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region. The settlement in question is called Varovarkova. The setback for Ukraine comes just days after it lost Pokrovsk to Russian forces. In fact, Russian troops also claim to have carried out strikes against Ukraine's energy and transportation infrastructure, as well as drone launch sites. Ukrainian military says that its troops struck the Afipsky oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar Krai to weaken Russia's offensive potential and disrupt its logistical supply. The Ukrainian forces also attacked the Uryumtsk oil depot in Russia's Volgograd Oblast. All right, moving on. Christmas is round the corner and it seems like UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is not in Santa's good books. At least that's what a light-hearted political poll suggests, that Santa Claus would vote green if general election were held tomorrow in the UK. The poll was commissioned by political scientist Professor Philip Cowley for The House, which is a magazine for MPs and peers. According to a YouGov survey, almost 1 in 3 voters believe that Father Christmas would back the Green Party rather than the Labour, the Conservatives or Reform UK. Even among Labour supporters, 1 in 5 think that Santa Claus would be more likely to vote Green than support a second term for Prime Minister Keir Starmer. More than 2,000 people were asked to imagine how Santa might vote at the next general election. While many assumed that he would share their own political views, opinions varied across party lines. Among Conservative voters, just over a quarter believed Santa would vote Conservative. However, a larger group thought that he would not vote at all and would instead stay at home in Lapland. Reform UK voters were the most convinced of Santa's political leanings. Nearly half believed that he would vote for Reform. None thought that he would support Labour, although a small number still believed that he would vote Green. Now, voters were also asked to imagine the political preferences of Ebenezer Scrooge, who is a fictional character and the protagonist of Charles Dickens's 1843 novella, A Christmas Carol. Here, the result was clearer. A third of respondents believed that Scrooge would support Reform UK, including nearly a quarter of Reform's own voters. 1 in 5 said that Scrooge would vote Conservative, including 15% of Conservative supporters. 14% believed that he would back the Labour, possibly attracted by Keir Starmer's attempts to cut benefits. Chile has delivered a decisive verdict at the ballot box. Ultra-conservative former Congressman Jose Antonio Cast has been elected as the country's next president. Cast's campaign has dominated by fears over crime, migration and economic uncertainty. With more than 99% of polling stations counted, Cast won 58.16% of the vote, soundly defeating leftist candidate Jeanette Jara, who was a former Labour minister under the outgoing president Gabriel Boric, who finished with 41.84%. Following the Chilean tradition, Boric congratulated Cast in a televised phone call on his victory to begin the presidential transition.
Hello, Jose Antonio Cast. I am calling you following a beautiful Republican tradition that we're proud of and that honors us, which is the call from the outgoing president to the president-elect.
Today I offer you the same, that this is an orderly, respectful transition. And after March 11th, when I swear in as president, I would be interested in counting on your opinions and perspective on the country.
Now remember, this was Cast's third run for the presidency. The 59-year-old had lost the 2021 runoff to Boric, but this time he returned with a campaign built around a tough-on-crime, anti-migration message, and it resonated with the voters. The son of a former Nazi party member, he's an admirer of dictator Augusto Pinochet and a staunch Catholic. Cast is well known for his hard-line positions opposing abortion and same-sex marriage and promising a crackdown on undocumented migration. Despite his sweeping victory, Kast will govern without an absolute majority in the Congress. Even with all the right-wing parties combined, he falls short of majority in the lower house and the Senate, potentially complicating his ultra-conservative agenda. Many analysts say that Kast's success lay in tapping into one of Chileans' deepest concerns. Once viewed as one of the safest and most prosperous countries in South America, Chile has been disrupted in recent years by the COVID-19 pandemic, violent social protests, and an increase in organized crime. Healthcare and education also remain important issues for Chileans. Over the past decade, Chile's migrant population has doubled, driven largely by an influx of around 700,000 Venezuelans fleeing their country's economic collapse. Kast has repeatedly linked migration to insecurity during the campaign. He's issued a stark ultimatum as well to the country's estimated 330,000 undocumented migrants. He warned they must leave before he takes office on the 11th of March or face expulsion. Now, Kast's platform included a Trump-style border security plan featuring detention centers, 5-meter-high walls, electric fences, 3-meter-deep trenches, and an expanded military presence, especially along the northern border with Peru and Bolivia. The president-elect has pledged to cut public spending as well by $6 billion within the next 18 months, though he has yet to spell out how those cuts would be implemented. As Chile prepares for a sharp political shift, the election marks a major turning point for the country.